Hey, this is Evan Marquez, dating coach for smart, strong, successful women, your personal trainer for love. Welcome back to the Love You podcast, where I'm going to teach you everything there is to know about dating, relationships, sex, and men from a man's point of view. Uh, really excited. I get the best interviews. Like Donald Trump has the best words. I get the best interviews. And before I introduce my guest today, I just want to share with you, I'm really grateful for your listening. Appreciate your positive reviews. If you're a regular listener and you haven't done so yet, do me the small favor of subscribing on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a kind comment. It makes a difference with the algorithm. More and more people see us every single day. Um, Stick around to the end of the podcast and I'll tell you how you could work with me, how you could join the new Love You community, how you could get some more free information delivered to your inbox. In the meantime, I want to tell you about my friend Sara. Here is her brief bio. Sara Davison, known as the divorce coach, is a multi-award winning coach, twice best-selling author and podcast host of Heartbreak to Happiness. Sara is also a global media commentator for TV and radio on breakups, divorce, and domestic abuse. Following the launch of Sara's breakup and divorce coach practitioner accreditation programs in 2018, she founded the International Divorce Coach Center of Excellence, which now has a coaching community of 450 coaches spanning 23 countries and 5 continents. That is impact. Sara's coaching hub is the leading global provider of breakup, divorce, and domestic abuse coaching support for businesses of all sizes as part of their employee well-being program. My God, Sara, welcome to the Love You podcast. I want to
Oh,
ask you as much about your business success as your insights on divorce, but congratulations on all that you've done and the difference that you're making.
oh, thank you so much. I think it helps when you're really passionate about what you do. That would be my secret for success is just be passionate and then it's not work at all. It's just because you love it.
That's really amazing. So how did you come to this work? I could only imagine that if divorce and domestic abuse is your area of expertise, you have some sort of harrowing tale to tell.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't on the job careers board at school when I was thinking what I was going to do for my career. No, I was married for, gosh, I think we made nearly 3 years before I was really catapulted out of the relationship. I thought I'd met my soulmate. I thought we were happy. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it, Evan? Looking back, definitely warning signs and big red flags. But we had a global business together, so we worked together. We had an office in Sydney, we had an office in London where we lived. Our son was 1 year old at the time, and literally overnight, I found out that my husband not only did not want to be married to me anymore, but was madly in love with somebody else. And this somebody else was 12 years younger than me. And let me tell you, ouch, that doesn't help. Stunningly beautiful. And again, ouch, that never helps either. And then I found out within a couple of months she was pregnant.
This is, I think
So
I've seen this movie before.
I'm sure you've seen this movie many times. And then it kind of went on to the fact that she was made a director of our company. They moved into the penthouse apartment above where my son and I lived in the same development. It was very, very difficult, as you can imagine. I did a lot of that ugly crying on the bathroom floor. I did a lot of calling my mum at 2 a.m. because no one else was awake. I literally was devastated. My whole life, as I had planned it, seen it, believed it was going to play out, had just literally disappeared in front of me. And I was really scared. I mean, genuinely terrified about what was going to come of me. Um, so, having spent quite a long time crying, and actually went out to the Sydney office to work out there for a little while. And I don't know, some of your listeners will resonate with this, I'm sure. If you've been cheated on and then you find out your partner has cheated on you, then suddenly, whether it's colleagues or friends and family, they all feel slightly relieved and come forward with their story about how they found out that they were cheating on you. And everyone then thinks, oh, it's okay now to discuss this. And I was in the Sydney office and very well meaning, but this colleague had come up and said, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you know. And then had told me how she'd found out, which was pretty horrific. And I left the office. I was like, I need to go for a walk. I just need to get out of it. And I sat on what is one of the most beautiful beaches in my opinion in the world, Balmoral Beach in Sydney. And I was sat there on this white beach, bawling my eyes out, sobbing. And I suddenly caught myself. It was about 3 months, I think, after I'd found out. And I was like, do you know what? I cannot carry on like this. I've been looking for help. I couldn't find anything specific, which I thought was mad because heartbreak is something we all go through, as you know. Every single person on the planet deals with heartbreak at least once if you're lucky, I think. Um, and so I was sitting there thinking, enough's enough. I am done. And that's where my motto, screw you, watch this, was born. And I was determined in that moment that I was going to take my power back, step up. I've been a coach about 15 years at that point. And I thought, if there is no help, I'm going to create it. I'm going to combine my coaching skills with this horrendous divorce process I've been thrown into. And I'm going to find a way through, not just for me and my son, but also then with the mission to help as many people around the world so that they don't have to ever feel like I'm feeling sat here today. And that's
Yeah.
literally where it was born.
Well, that's I don't know if the word is a beautiful story, but it's a potent story about how you transform your pain into something important. So uh, all these years in, now you've got this practice and you've refined it. I want to provide, for the sake of our interview, some tangible takeaways for
Yeah.
people. As much as if we're on a date, I'd be asking you much more about yourself and your story. But our listeners, I think, are really going to want to know, because they are too. Most of them are divorced. They're going to want to know, am I sort of am I the kind of person who would avail myself to these resources? So, how do people get into relationships that are toxic? Not simply just, hey, we grew apart in the marriage, which is a different question. Stuff
Yeah.
that's really, you're the frog boiling in the water.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly how it happens. Obviously, the perpetrator or the abuser doesn't show up on the first date as they do on the last day of your relationship. And that's the key here, is being able to spot the signs of an unhealthy relationship. And let's just talk a little bit about what that is, because there is a big difference between a healthy relationship and an unhealthy relationship. And the healthy relationship, there is compromise. There, you have the ability to talk about how you genuinely feel. You're not thinking about, the reaction of the other person. You're free to express how you feel. You have a safe space to communicate, and that's well received, and you can have a discussion. Now, that doesn't mean there's no conflict. Quite often in a healthy relationship, there are arguments. That's a healthy way of discussing things. You may disagree, but it's the ability to discuss that and come to a healthy conclusion where there's compromise, maybe on both sides, or maybe on one you take a step back, and then another time your partner takes a step back. But you both care enough about each other to care that there is a resolution, and a fair resolution. Now, an unhealthy relationship is completely different. The word compromise does not come into it, which is why if you're breaking up from somebody who's toxic or abusive, then there is no such thing as a compromise. There will be a lot of conflict, but the goal will be to cause as much suffering and pain as possible, and ultimately total annihilation. And so you will know if you're in that relationship, if you are thinking about walking on eggshells, if you're thinking that you might need to censor what you're saying because you're worried about the reaction of your partner. They're also, sorry, go on.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Because I'm really engaged in this topic, and you're the expert, and I am in no position to second guess the expert. Um, Maybe this is very specific to a certain kind of narcissist. What I often think, though, is that there's a subset of selfish men who do what they do for their needs. They're not necessarily evil, or um, even malicious, trying to, how do I do the worst possible thing? It's, they just think of themselves and nobody else. And the byproduct is something like that. The picture you painted was, there's literally a guy who's almost like an evil mastermind who's trying to figure out how to fuck with you. So is it both? Are those, both of those guys real? Are more of them de demented, mustache twisting people than I think. Because that's the thing that always sort of surprises me because I haven't lived that life is I think most people just take care of their own needs and there's the crossfire, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I think we have a global stage where you see all sorts play out in front of us, and there are all extremes. I think there is a spectrum, and there
Sure.
is just selfish, right? There's just selfish behavior, and then there is manipulative, toxic, abusive, unhealthy behavior. I think what it boils down to that though is if you're not happy or it
Correct.
doesn't feel right, it's not right. Okay, because abuse,
Yeah, and it
toxic
doesn't matter
relationships.
which one it is, your needs are not being met.
Yeah, exactly. And I think quite often I don't use the N word, the narcissist word very often,
Sure.
especially in my training school, because well, we're a coach, right? We're coaches. I'm not qualified to label, diagnose personality disorders, so that I'm very clear to stay in my lane. But also for me, labeling your partner doesn't help you. In fact, what it quite often does is it increases the intensity of emotion around it, increases the drama. You start giving them a label and then they start playing up to a label, or you start imagining things. Maybe you're not imagining, maybe they're real, but you're creating a different reality. What we look at is what are the behaviors that are showing up and do they
Right.
fit a toxic relationship dynamic? And if they do, first of all, learn to spot the signs. I call it hone your radar. I think, especially if you're empathetic, you've got to be careful because as an empathetic person, we enable those toxic relationships to grow. Now, that does not mean, and I want to be really clear on this, that it is your fault. Okay.
Right.
As a survivor myself, and I've worked with many survivors of these relationships, it's not our fault. We do not do anything that means we deserve that or we have made that worse. But some of our behavior will be enabling because if you're a highly empathetic person, you want to help. You want to make things better. Someone might have had a bad day. You probably want to avoid conflict. So you're saying, okay, well, I'll suck that up for now because if I mention it, it's going to cause problems. Or I know why he or she is doing this. You know, their mum was difficult, or their dad was difficult, or the boss was hard on them today. So we make excuses. We don't stand up for ourselves. And ultimately, that chips away the boundaries that we initially have when we go into relationships. If you go in with a healthy mindset of what is acceptable behavior. And as those bricks come out of that boundary, that wall you have around you of what is acceptable, if you don't stand up to them then and there, then those bricks are very difficult to replace. So over time, your boundaries are completely eroded and you're dealing with unacceptable behavior all the time.
Right. And so then sort of the million dollar question is why do people stay in relationships? Because they're not happy. Technically, these guys can't make anybody happy. Whoever they go out with next is going to have the same experience. It's not like he suddenly becomes a great guy for someone else. So, what's the psychology behind why people stay in situations that aren't serving them? What's the
Yeah.
inertia, or is it just because we're married that's bigger than just a relationship breakup because the stakes are higher?
Well, first of all, they can make you happy. They can make you ecstatically happy. In fact, when you fall in love with them, that is exactly what they're doing. They're using the love bombing term that you might have heard of, whereas they make you fall in love with this almost a sort of unbelievable level of attention, affection, generosity, like creating security, stability. They will find out what your pain points are going into the relationship and make sure that they solve those for you. So, for example, if you're worried about being alone, they will never leave you alone. They will tell you they will be there for you forever. So they will make grandiose promises. So you feel like you're on a pedestal, everything's incredible. You've met that fairy tale Disney partner that you've that you've always dreamed of. And that's what we fall in love with. And that's the hook because you fall in love with the perception, but that isn't actually the reality of who they are consistently. They can be that person to hook you in, but then over time, the mask slips, the behavior falters. Now, that will be the odd thing to start with because they want to get you in, because the more you're involved, the more they take control over you. So then the control tactics will increase, and that will mean things like isolation. So, first of all, they might say, oh, do you know what? I'm a bit tired to visit your parents this weekend. Maybe we'll go another time. So you go, okay, being empathetic. Sure, darling, we'll stay at home. I'll tell them we'll come another day. over time, that means you're being distanced from your family. Further down the relationships, like I hate your parents, I don't want to go see them. They'll isolate you from friends. So friends saying, well, maybe, maybe they haven't got your best interests at heart. Planting little seeds, creating that isolation so that you become more dependent on them emotionally, financially. Again, looking at, you don't need to work so much. I can pay the bills. You don't need to worry so much about that. Or I think you're spending a lot. Do you want to show me what you're spending just so that I can keep a check? Because I'm in charge of the budgeting here. I'll look after us, make sure we're safe financially. So eventually, your control is, they have control over you, your control is reduced. So you are highly dependent on them and isolated very often from loved ones or other friendship groups. Often, then shame might be a part of it, not wanting to tell people what's going on, and then covering some of the behavior as well. And then sometimes the relationship can escalate. There may be violence, there may be coercive control, covers a wide range of name calling, belittling, and all that over time erodes, as you say, confidence, self-esteem, self-reliance is much reduced. So when people say, why didn't you just leave? What you often find is it's very, very difficult for victims of abuse to leave a toxic relationship. And the stats show it takes on average 8 times for somebody to successfully leave.
8 times what?
To leave a toxic, abusive relationship. Yeah.
Meaning you leave and then he convinces you to stay. I mean, you don't really leave, you just.
Well, yeah, sometimes they leave or sometimes they're about to leave. The challenge you've got is they run in cycles. So first of all, things will be great, you'll be ticking along, and then you'll feel that there's an incident brewing. And that could be, you'll be walking on eggshells. You'll be worried about the consequences of certain behaviors. Something will happen. Now that could be a comment, verbal abuse, emotional controlling behavior, violence, any of those above things. Then you take a step back because you're scared, you're worried, you close down a bit, you withdraw from them. Now, what happens is they need you for their supply of adulation to survive. It's like they need like oxygen. They need you like we need oxygen to survive. So they are just as dependent in a way on their victims as the victims are dependent on them. So what happens is as we pull away, they realize we pull away. Now they will try to what's called hoover us back in. Now, hoovering can be many forms. It could be, well, you're ridiculous. That didn't happen like that. Or it could be, I'm so sorry. Let me make it up to you. Here's some flowers. Let me give you a hug. Oh, I think you're imagining it. Maybe there's something wrong with you. Whatever the tactic to bring you back in. And then maybe the next day you wake up, very common, everything is back to normal. Now, what happens for the victim of the abuse is like, oh, okay, we're back to normal. We're on even ground. They're being really nice. They're just, it's like it never happened. Am I going to rock the boat and potentially go back to that horrific incident and cause more drama? Or am I going to just bank where I'm at and go, okay, it's okay for now. So maybe things are going to be okay. And also very common to blame ourselves because we've probably been told it's our fault many times, or we got it wrong, or we didn't understand, or we aggravated the situation. So again, that's why we then go, okay, well, we'll stay. Also, another really, I think, chilling fact, Evan, is that 30% of homicides happen within 3 months of separation from an abusive relationship. And what I find the most disturbing about this is in over 80% of those homicides, there was never any physical violence before. So what that means is that there could be emotional abuse, but as you pull away, their need for control increases. So they have to take more drastic measures to get you back, which is why often it can tip into violence. So a lot of my clients will say, well, I'm okay to go back and have a chat about where the kids are going to live and things like that, because, they've never been violent before. But actually, the research shows that you are now entering quite a serious, dangerous zone. So you have to be super careful. So that's why having somebody that really understands this on your team, like talking to your own domestic abuse local charity is really important. They can safeguard, do your risk assessment, put you in touch with people in your community that can help you. But actually having somebody that understands, can guide you through these is really important. So it's not easy to leave, as you can see.
Yeah, I had a question from about 7 minutes ago. I almost forgot what it was because you said something that sparked something, and it was about when the mask slips. Um, when do you see that happening most often? I have my own pet theories, but when do you see the masks start to slip, prototypically?
It varies depending on the perpetrator, and quite often we won't see the mask slip. So we will see the change in behavior, but we won't note it as a mask slip. Well, because we're so in love. We've got the rose tinted glasses on. We've got this ultimate love that we fell in love with them on, which is incredible. And even if the mask slips, we're just clawing to get back to where it was
Sure.
before. Yeah, I mean, I would say in the first 6 months, rarely in most cases, but then as they have their control set up, and some people can work faster than others, some people are more vulnerable than others, so it can be quicker process. But once you are within the control, that's when the mask tends to slip more because they've got more ability to then be controlling.
Okay. So let's take this, and again, I'm kind of winding you up and letting you go because you have so much to offer on this subject. Um, when someone gets the courage to make a real break, how is the divorce process different from a regular breakup process?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you're going through a healthy breakup, obviously there will be conflict and disagreement. So you'll probably see the worst side of your partner then, because it's normal, right? You're splitting lifestyles, finances, children, time with with the children. It's really painful. So it's going to bring out the worst in even the most amicable of couples splitting, right? So that's normal. But as I mentioned before, the word compromise will be in the mix. So you don't want to walk away without it being fair because you've got to live with each other. You've got to have if you've got kids, that ongoing relationship. So there will be some form of compromise on both sides. Like you both want to get to some fair resolution. You might desperately want that piano, but ultimately you're willing to give on something else so that you can make it work. Now, if you're divorcing an abusive personality, there will be no such thing as compromise, and they will manipulate the system. And unfortunately, the family court system around the world is not fit for purpose for victims of abuse. And it's something that I campaign at Parliament level in the British government here because it's really difficult for victims to have a fair voice. Perpetrators can manipulate the system. If you think about it, post separation abuse is very misunderstood. Most people, including my own family lawyer, said to me, well, now you're not living with them anymore. It will be better. That's not true because all that toxic behavior, the lying, the gaslighting, the misdirecting, the confusion, the belittling, the aggression, all the put downs, all that is now channeled purely through the finance and the children through the legal process. So they're going to lie. They're going to withhold information. They're not going to reply when they're supposed to or when they say they will. Anything to make that process harder than it should be. Now, again, if they have more finances available to fight, that becomes even more difficult. If you don't have anything to protect yourself to fight with, again, even more difficult. So there's lots of variations along that. But the important thing to know is you're never alone because we've created the support to help people through that. You don't have to feel like you're going through it alone like I did, like you're the only sane person in the lunatic asylum, which is the family court system for most victims of abuse. And worryingly, research done in the UK on the family court system here showed that over 82% of victims of abuse felt re-traumatized just by the family court system alone, let alone the abuser. So we do have to be very aware that going into a divorce with somebody who's toxic is going to mean post-separation abuse. And this can even be worse in some cases, a lot of cases, than during the relationship.
Okay. Um, so you choose to go through this divorce. You know you're going to be putting yourself through more pain, a different kind of pain, the unwinding of the relationship. And then you go into what you call a lost cycle. What does that mean? And again, what I like about when I talk to experts is they all kind of come up with their own terminology to describe something that most people could experience, but they don't have a label for. What is a lost cycle?
So the loss cycle is actually a cycle that was known as the grief cycle, created by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross back in the
Hmm.
70s, I think. which was dealing with bereavement.
Yeah.
Because not many people know this, Evan, but divorce is actually recognized as the second most traumatic life experience we go through after death of a loved one. So it follows that we follow the same process, that loss cycle, the 5 different stages that you go through when you're grieving the loss of a loved one, but also grieving the loss of your relationship. Now, even if there's lots of different breakups, aren't there? Some fizzle out over time, in which case that might be a slightly easier transition. But if you're thrown into heartbreak or your partner's cheated on you, that can be more of an emotional roller coaster. But it follows the same 5 stages. So, shall I run through the stages quickly for you? Would that
I'm
be useful?
familiar with them, but I think it's useful
Okay.
to
Yeah.
at least put the label on so people who are listening and are either going through it or thinking of going through it to know what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, the first stage denial, a lot of people wonder how how does that apply to breakups? Because if they've dumped you, they've dumped you. But the denial stage, I mean, classic for me. I found, I came home from Australia. This was a different time than I had my screw you, watch this moment. But previously, I'd come back. And when I said there were warning signs, there were warning signs. One of them was I came back from the airport. I thought, right, the best way to get rid of my jet lag is to go for a run. Went to my bedside table, opened my bedside drawer, and I wanted to get my lip balm. And what was in there was a contact lens box. I don't wear contact lenses, Evan. I opened it up thinking, what is this? And inside was a big eyelash, false eyelash. And I didn't wear false eyelashes either. So I was like, who's squeezed down the side of the bed next to the curtain to get to my bedside table? Okay, so I closed it up, I put it back in the drawer, and I did not mention it to people because talking about it would make it really real. On some level, my whole world had shifted. And eventually I made a few inquiries. Do you wear contact lenses to the cleaner that came in once a week? And a few people that I knew had popped round, but I didn't want to confront it. So that's the denial stage. And it's really common. And then moving through that, you have anger, obviously, as your emotions might peak. For me, it was more frustration because I was incapable of expressing anger, even though my dad was telling me, get angry with him. I was just so hurt. But everyone is different. So frustration and stress also comes into that, I believe. Then you have the bargaining, where I started to make myself look more attractive, make more of an effort, do more of the things I know he wanted me to do more of, like cooking, which is really not my skill strength. So doing things like that to try and save the relationship. Then there's depression, and that's normal and really healthy. One of the things I see is that people get diagnosed as depressed and then accept that as a label for life. No, no, this is a normal, healthy part of the grieving process, and it comes to an end as you move up into acceptance. Even if you still kind of want your partner back, at this point, you can't go back, or even you don't want to at this point. But usually people get stuck in acceptance when they cannot see what the future looks like. And you cannot move towards something you cannot see. So whether most people, it's either a blank canvas or even a black hole. So as a coach, I spend a lot of time throwing as much color on that blank canvas or shining a light into that black hole as possible to encourage people to see it, which tips the balance and creates momentum. So yeah, there's that roller coaster of emotions with energy high and low. And it's really normal to oscillate between one or two of those phases and get stuck. But I think the power of the loss cycle is giving you clarity to know where you've been and what's yet to come, so you can get the help to push through those next sections, so you can pop out the other side and move on, because there is a lot of hope at the end. You can go on and be happier and more confident, and life starts after the end of your divorce. So lots of opportunity for sure.
Divorce brings up so many things, many of which you share on your podcast, which you have here. The toll it takes on your self-esteem, the toll it takes on building a life by yourself when you thought you had the security of someone to split the money and responsibility of living, and then the feeling of trust, or the lack of feeling of trust, both in the opposite sex and in your own judgment. How do people begin to break that down and start to rebuild some of these aspects of their life?
Yeah, I mean, how will I ever trust anyone ever again is one of the most frequently asked questions that I get. And I'm sure you do as well. It's just something that a lot of people want to know. I was speaking to someone today who said, I'm never going to trust another man ever again. I just don't think I can. And my response to that is always, yeah, I get that. And we don't want to be giving away our trust. But I think the key comes down to doing the work on you. So understanding and learning from the lessons of the past. Because life has a funny way, doesn't it, of keep teaching us the same lessons over and over again until we go, okay, I get it. I banked that lesson. I've learned my lesson. I'm changing. I'm going to do things differently. So I think if you can bank those lessons then and work on yourself to work out what do you need from a partner. A lot of us know what we want, but very few of us take the time to look at what we actually need. Like emotionally, do you need someone that's stable, somebody that, can pick you up when you're down? What's key for you and important? Kindness, loyalty, all those things. But if you know that, then the key here is to learn to trust yourself to make better informed decisions about who you're inviting into your life and have safety nets. Like, for example, I always do an exercise where you have up to 5 must not haves with a partner, which break your absolute cardinal rules about dating. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it's simple, like they smoke, or maybe it's they're rude. But if any of those show up early on, that acts as a safety net for you to say, I'm deploying my parachute and exiting the building with immediate effect, which avoids the, oh, well, they'll change when they get to know me, or they're just saying that, that's a joke, or when they get to know me better, they wouldn't do that to me. So again, I think it's important to set up those safety nets for you. So when you can go out and date with confidence, but it's not about giving your trust away. It's about doing the work so you understand what you want and need. And then you are in control to decide who you want to trust rather than giving it away.
Could we have a conversation about this? Um, because uh, I think that everything I'm not going to disagree with anything you said, because I'm not a subject matter expert on that. If anything, I come at everything from almost the opposite angle, because I'm in a healthy relationship. I teach healthy relationships, and I say, here's what a healthy relationship looks and feels like.
Yeah.
And so, between someone who's had her trust in her own judgment and men destroyed, and maybe the platonic ideal is the thing that I talk about, which is my statement is it's full trust or no trust. You can't have a relationship with someone if you half trust them. That
Yeah.
that in and of itself will undermine the relationship. And a trustworthy person isn't gonna spend too much time with someone who doesn't trust them. When like you can't treat an innocent person like they are a criminal.
Yeah.
And that creates this sort of conundrum because there's the understandable school of thought, he has to earn my trust. And the innocent person who's like, I don't know what I could do to earn your, I don't know how to prove to you I'm not a bad guy. I'm just a good guy. So how do we bridge those two gaps? Because
Yeah.
I think your point is real. I also think my point is real.
Yeah. And I think I agree. And I'm not just I agree with what you're saying. I think the part we haven't discussed yet is when you get into a relationship, you're working out, does this work for me or not? When do you give? When is it a relationship, I guess, to then say, right, now we've got to this point. I agree. You've got to dive in, you've got to be open, but you've got to have done the work to make sure they are trustworthy before you give it. So I guess it's not just handing it on day one, on date one. Is there a time frame that you can work towards as you are dating with your safety nets, getting to know someone? Personally, I don't believe you really know somebody, and they sort of drop the honeymoon period till about 3 months in. Then you're really getting to see what's beneath the hood, what's going on here.
So that to me is when the mask starts to slip. That was that
Potentially,
was
yeah,
that was the thing that I see the most often. The first 3 months is the honeymoon chase performative phase.
yeah,
And now that he's got you and you're in a relationship and you're sleeping together and integrating lives and maybe saying I love you, now he can be himself
yeah.
fully and you get the full picture.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say 3 months is, you can't decide whether you're in love or not in love in the 3 months because you don't know this person
Right.
properly, deeply yet. It's after 3 months, that's give and take, but I see it all the time. 3 months is that, oh, but I was in love and now, And it's like, okay, but I trusted him. It's like, trusted him after 3 weeks, after 6 weeks. Okay, it takes longer to really build that depth, to be able to see what you're getting into. So just bear that in mind. And I think after your 12 weeks, 3 months, then you can have a better informed decision. Watch carefully with your eyes open. And if you've done the work, you're going to spot the signs because you've honed your radar. If you haven't done the work, you're just repeating destructive patterns because you don't want to be alone. And that's the biggest fear for many people when they come out of a relationship is, I don't want to be alone. What happens if nobody ever loves me again? So therefore they have two criteria for finding a partner. One is they have a pulse, and the other is they show them one sign of affection. And then they go into what I term as limpet mode and sucker themselves to this poor person.
Yeah.
And they don't have that 3 month break clause in, they're just in.
So, what are your four keys to surviving, thriving after a breakup?
Well, that's a great question. So, first of all, create your breakup support team. And these are not necessarily your besties, because besties can be very well meaning and love you, but also be emotionally invested in the breakup as well and really resent your ex and feel betrayed by your ex just as much as you. So, have constructive people on the team that can really help you. And especially if you're worried about something, so it might be money or something to do with the legal process, make sure you have somebody that can answer those questions that keep you awake at night on your team. Really important. Secondly, I would say focus on doing the work. We sort of touched on that a bit about doing the work. So deep diving into what you want now moving forward and what you've learned from that relationship. It's key now to put in place your acceptable behavior boundary, rebuild that if it needs rebuilding. Thirdly, I would say self-care is never selfish. And quite often, especially highly empathetic people will be bottom of their list of looking after when, like they say on the aeroplane, put your mask on first, your oxygen mask before anyone else's. Sometimes that goes against our instincts, especially as parents. We're like, no, I want to look after my kid first. But if you're not around to make good decisions, it's not going to help your child. So self-care, building that in is going to be really, really important. And then obviously, fourthly, I'm going to say get some professional help to fast track you through because there are people out there, whether it's groups, online sessions or one-to-one, or just reading some books or listening to podcasts, get the help because the help is there now. It is. I mean, you've been out here for almost as long, I think more time maybe than me. I've been coaching for 30 years and specializing in this field for about, gosh, 16 now. So yeah, there is a lot of help out there to help you fast track these kind of situations. So don't be afraid to ask for help because quite often that's the turning point for so many.
You said something that struck me, it's not even that it struck me as untrue. It was just it was a different take, which is why I want to bring it up here. You talked about the concept of co-parenting, and you say your term is co-parenting is not possible, right? Call it parallel parenting instead. What does that mean for single mothers who are trying to navigate this process?
Well, co-parenting is definitely possible, and what you want to aim for, if you've got a healthy ex-partner where you can get on and you can have trust and you can talk about what you want openly. The challenge is if you're parenting with an abusive personality type, if you
Mm.
tell them what you want and what you feel is in the best interest of your children, they will use it against you and your child to hurt you. So it sounds, for people that haven't experienced it, they'll go, oh, come on, it can't be that bad. It is that bad and worse. I mean, I've seen horrific abuse. So, so my advice is you cannot co-parent with somebody who is toxic. You cannot, and you will drive yourself mad trying to do that, which will put more stress on you and ultimately your child. The advice from others, lawyers, is often, well, you can parallel parent. But to be honest, that doesn't really work either. Parallel parenting is just forget the bedtimes and how much on screen time your child gets. Forget trying to sort of fight over those things. Just worry about the big things, like health and education or anything like that. But if you can't agree on the small things, Evan, you've got no hope in hell of agreeing what school they're going to go to or whether they're going to be vaccinated for this or that. So ultimately, really, really difficult to do. We do have lots of help and support for people doing that. I've created a whole book on it. It's basically how to navigate that process because you have to be careful, but you have to take your power back and you have to learn how not to get impacted by their behavior. If you understand the game they're playing, the rules of the game they're playing, and they are playing a game whether we like it or not, and they will move you around the chessboard like a pawn until you learn the rules. If you learn the rules, master the rules, you can stay 2 steps ahead. And that's how to parent with somebody who's toxic. Understand what's going on with them, understand the dynamic, and then you can take considered decisions.
Is this all stuff you had to learn through real life experience yourself?
Unfortunately, yes. But actually, as you started this whole conversation, Evan, I believe that your greatest pain in life can be, can be your greatest superpower, your greatest gift. And I wouldn't wish what I've been through on anyone. A lot of it I can't even talk about because the family courts are shrouded in secrecy in this country, as they are in many countries. But I fight and I've turned everything that I have experienced into something that I can use to help train my coaches in my coaching school. I mean, we've actually now nearly trained 700 coaches across 29 countries and 5 continents, which is incredible because the help is now out there for people to go and access. But also, working with clients, just sharing those tools and, sharing it on, I'm so grateful to you for giving me access to your podcast because, being a guest on here means that people hear that there is hope. And, I've been some very dark places with my relationship and the way I've been treated, not just by my ex, but by the authorities and the people involved. And, it's nearly broken me several times. But as a mum, my child is my greatest source of fire. And that screw you, watch this motto, I think, has helped many of my clients and many of my coaches pick themselves back up and turn that pain into their greatest superpower. And it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible.
What happened with your story in the court system? You've brought it up a few times, a lack of trust in the court system, and I know there's another universe out there where men are complaining the court system is, biased against them. You obviously have a different story. So what
Yeah.
is it? And is it unique to Australia, or is this pretty much universal in your experience working globally?
No, no. I mean, I'm in the UK, so here in the UK, but Australia, it
Oh,
happens.
sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, yeah. No, but it happens all over the world. That look, this system isn't a fair system. I can't talk about the personal issues of my case because of the secrecy around the family court. So that's something I'm working to. But my campaigning work very much focuses around helping predominantly women. I know that there are a lot of men that suffer from that, and we do support them too, but predominantly this is a female gender-based issue. Whether we like it or not, it is. The stats prove that. And my clinic is full of women, some men, but mainly women. As a victim of abuse, quite often you are emotionally seen as less stable because you are emotionally upset, frightened, scared, you're vulnerable, your confidence is
Right.
in your self-esteem. When you're in a court situation looking at where the child is going to spend time with, perpetrators very often come across as very charismatic or in control. They might have more control over finances. So that is open to abuse. And when
Yeah.
you look at it and break it down, very much there's a conflict of interest within the system. When you look at experts within the family court system, especially the experts that get involved in children cases, you might have seen that in the press, but over here in the UK, there's a lot of publicity around children experts because the conflict of interest is they get paid to make decisions. Now, if you have law firms that maybe weaponize some of these arguments and know tactically how to get children to be removed from a parent and spend more time with another parent, you'll see that one of the biggest challenges we're facing is that children are being taken from vulnerable victims and handed over to perpetrators. And this can be with not just emotional abuse, I don't mean it as in belittling that, but also sexual abuse and other things happening. So I deal with that in my private clinic. I deal with it when I train my coaches. Many of them are survivors of the system and come out the other side and want to make a change, want to support other victims who are dealing with similar issues. There are a lot of problems within the court system, and there are some good professionals in there, but there are also a lot of very corrupt professionals in there. And my belief is that we need to shine a light and have much more transparency so that everybody can see what is going on and everyone can have opinion, because it is one of the biggest scandals that is going on around the world and people don't know about it. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I spend a lot of my time helping people that are currently going through it or people that have been who are dealing with PTSD from that system for them and their children. So yeah, it's a big issue and it's a big topic.
Yeah, no, thank you for explaining that to me. I when you started to tell the story, I realized I know someone who went through that exact same thing, where she lost custody of her son because she was seen as the unstable one in the relationship, and he had more money, and I could only imagine how often that takes place and how powerless someone must feel in those circumstances to have probably your most important thing taken away from you beyond your control.
Yeah, in very stressful situations. I mean, going to court is not a friendly, comfortable experience for anyone.
Sure.
Very intimidating. And it's designed in some ways, especially if there's a law firm that will weaponize it. I call them the dark side of family law. There's some great family lawyers out there who do great work in this area and really support victims, but there are also many that weaponize. And I think that's my biggest problem. I don't know how these people sleep at night, Evan. I really, really don't. So I won't stop until the light is bright on this. But yeah, I mean, just the systems that I've created will help people to manage that, especially the online support groups. They're free for a week, so you can come on and just get involved, get support from my coaches, find your tribe. There's other people dealing with similar issues, not just that, heartbreak and all sorts of things. But I think having a safe space to talk and be where people get you and can help you with the emotional and practical tools to move through. Obviously, we can't give legal advice, but a lot of us have been through it, get it, understand it. So that's why having your tribe and having these groups are super, super powerful. And it's less than $1 an hour after that for coaching. I mean, I've made it as accessible as possible. I mean, I have to pay my coaches, they're phenomenal coaches for their time, but we do it just so that everyone can access it. And we have people from all over the world reaching out for that support, and it's daily. So yeah.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you. I'd love to. I mean, this has been a pretty serious episode. You're shining the light on sort of the worst of the worst case scenarios that women can face when they choose the wrong man and attach themselves to him and have to go through this process. So, what's one thing that people could take away that's a positive, starting, hey, you've got a blank canvas for your new life. What would you like it to look like? What would you tell someone on a note of hope?
Oh, there's so much hope. I think one, just knowing that people get it, that makes a big difference. But two, going through any kind of breakup is actually a golden opportunity to redesign your life just the way you want it. And this is the time just to really get down and think, what do I want? What do I want to become? Who do I want to be? And what do I want more of? I think a big thing is looking at the people that add value, make you feel good, make you feel supported, having a detox of those that don't, and definitely choosing to spend quality time with those that give you that boost and make you feel good about yourself. But this is your chance now. You can turn your pain into your power, as I've said. And that is reach out, get the support because you can definitely do it. And you just need a good friend by your side, to keep you motivated. Focus on what you're going to do to make your life better. Try to focus less on what your ex did and what they're doing now. It's always a good shift. So moving forward and dream big because you create your own reality.
Sara Davison, thank you very much for dropping so much wisdom, important stuff here today. I like how much of it echoes stuff that we talk about here, about giving away your power and looking to the future instead of looking to the past. Your catchphrase echoes with mine. I tell women you're the CEO of your love life, and men are just interns applying for a job.
I
So
love it.
there's a lot of overlap, just at different phases. So thank you for providing such a valuable resource to women today. If you guys want to follow Sara, you can go directly to her website, saradavison.com. We're going to link to her Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn pages as well. And if you're highly motivated to do something right now, go to evanmarckatz.com/divorce coach. So you could check out her breakup and divorce coach training program. My name is Evan Mark Katz. This is the Love You podcast. Thank you for listening today. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment. I thought this was a pretty potent episode and really kind of different tonally than the things that we usually do. And if you are inspired to do something different with your love life and you're on the other side of the divorce process and you just want to figure out how to start dating and choose better men, go to evanmarckatz.com/quiz. Put in your name and email address. I'll let you know if you're wasting time on the wrong men. You probably are. And if you're ready to start to be part of our Love You community, you can go to evanmarckatz.com and click on the Love You button. We have our course, our private Facebook community, very actively helping women just like Sarah's make better choices in love moving forward. And if you want to work with me privately, go to evanmarckatz.com/now. Fill out a short application, book a time on my calendar, and we'll talk about which coaching package is a good fit for you. I love you. I appreciate you. I appreciate my friend Sarah. And I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.